Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HeroQuest, and I regret to inform you that it is, once again, Monday, that most drab day of all the 7 days. You have my deepest condolences. However, with it being Monday, I'm very pleased to inform you that it is time for an episode of the BwodeCast, the long-form podcast-styled series in which I, Ash, talk about all things HeroQuest and HeroQuest/Dungeon Crawl adjacent. Before we get started, I just want to toast you and thank you for being here. No, I don't want to stick you in a toaster and literally, I want to raise my cup in celebration of your listening in. Thank you for your kind attention. This is my favorite mug, a 15-ounce, 2.5 health heart, cute anime girl mug from Lewd Complex, which I got from Spencer's a couple of years back. Nothing has really replaced it. I would probably use a branded mug, something that I created myself with the HeroQuest logo or Nilbog's face or something, if only I could get that size mug from Patreon. I haven't really worked out if I even want to do things like that just yet, though. So anyway, a toast. I have in here some instant coffee from Great Value, which is just the cheapest coffee and therefore the most convenient for me right now. And 2.5 pumps because I'm crazy and I kind of forgot that I wasn't preparing for work. And filling a 20-ounce mug of coffee of Jordan's sugar-free caramel syrup sweetener. I don't recommend doing that. It's not bad, but it's terribly sweet. Oh, yes, but at least it's coffee, so it works. On this fine Monday, whether you are commuting to or from work or school, I invite you to listen in and definitely comment down below. I don't care if you spam the comments with all kinds of different takes as you are listening throughout the video. I've actually seen a lot of people do that throughout this series and some other videos that I've done as well. And they're like, I'm sorry to have so many comments. I don't mind that. I like that stream of consciousness response. I mean, I like a lot of comments anyway, but it's really interesting to see that sort of beck and call response to things in the video. And plus, it's flattering. It proves that you're watching it all the way through. And there's just nothing to apologize for there. I actually really, really like that. So you don't have to comment like stream of consciousness, though. You can just as easily make a joke about goats or complain about how I don't sleeve my cards. It's all good here. I get the occasional comment, which more or less says, this isn't HeroQuest, I'm not going to watch this video. And I still appreciate those because even though they're pointless, it's still engagement and it actually helps the channel. So I want to talk today about an older topic, something that hasn't been broached in a while, at least to my knowledge. Something that I've talked about before in the past, kind of at length, but it was before all of the more recent and many would say mandatory releases in the HeroQuest realm. There are still a lot of things that I think a lot of folks are wanting from Avalon Hill, things that I don't know are within their power or really within their purview or their plans. And I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody here. I'm just a speculator who has seldom been wrong, but still a speculator nonetheless. Many of us have our laundry list of things that we would like for Avalon Hill to bring back into the current retail world, the current landscape. Some of these things are things that they've already brought back, but we just don't have the stock anymore. That's a numbers game. It is what it is. I see comments from people who blame Avalon Hill for that, and it's like there's really not a lot that they can actually do. But what I want to talk about actually goes a bit beyond all of the contemporary discussion and restocks and all of that. I want to harken back a couple of years ago to when Avalon Hill's Instagram account posed a question, and the question was very Hasbro-esque. This was pretty soon after the layoffs, so a lot of people approached this question with cautious, ambivalent, and some would say negative responses, perhaps a surprising amount of them. The question, more or less, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, was, would you like to see crossovers in the world of HeroQuest? Now, given the type of company that Hasbro is, and given the type of subsidiaries that they have, this question was answered I can't say overwhelmingly positive or negative. It was kind of 50-50 the way that I saw it at that point in time. The difference, the dichotomy between the responses, though, was that those who were in favor of it were like, yeah, sounds like a cool idea. I'm down for whatever. TMNT, let's go. With, absolutely nothing indicating that it would be any particular property or license at all. While the other side said, no, and here's why. And we typically had essays as to why we did not want crossovers, at least at that time. And I think that it probably wasn't the most aware thing for a brand, company, business, entity, social media manager, whoever it was at the time. It wasn't the most landscape aware, I'll put it, way to phrase that question. Because a lot of folks were also looking at that in terms of, well, no, I don't want Wizards of the Coast to be involved with HeroQuest in any way, shape, or form. I don't want HeroQuest and Dungeons & Dragons to merge in any way. That wasn't in the question. It was kind of context that was being pulled by the people who were commenting on it at the time, but I would say that it was not unreasonable to expect that that was one of the possibilities laid out in the drawing room for the direction of HeroQuest. And I think that this was really testing the waters more than anything. I don't think that they had active plans or their hands in any of the pots regarding what IPs they would be merging with or asking to collaborate with. I really just think this was a way to see if there was a lot of hype that could be generated on this one platform, which I have to believe the majority of their customer base is not using for reasons of keeping up with Avalon Hill news, just to see if they should start thinking about going in that direction. And it really made sense for them to test those waters and see, because we know that Hasbro does do crossovers with their different properties. And if a given property doesn't belong to them, they will find a way to collaborate with that owner of that IP, with that publisher. They can do it. In most cases, they're going to do it if they can, if they think it will be a positive response commercially. After all, we did see Betrayal at House on the Hill go through a number of collaborations. Most of those, if not all of them, did make sense. I think that Betrayal at Baldur's Gate was a really cool idea. I have that game. I think that it was no small effort to put that together and adapt the Betrayal gameplay system to the Baldur's Gate universe. And I think that the product is really cool for it. Talisman has a Batman Supervillains edition that on paper, I think sounds absolutely ridiculous. But as a Batman fan, I have to say, okay, I'd like to see what they'd come up with. And then when they actually have the game, I have that game. Shar and I have played it. It's actually a lot of fun. It really does theme the game well, and it makes subtle rule changes from the very solid framework of Talisman that makes for a really fun game. It's a really, really cool version of Talisman, and it's slightly different. So if you need something that's a little different from normal Talisman, and I don't mean packing on 2 to 18 of the expansions, you can play Batman Supervillains Edition. I think the Betrayal at the Nightbolt House with Pennywise made sense. It made sense as a small box, sort of, here's just a couple of scenarios, here's just a couple of cards and a couple of minis. I think that format works really well. I don't know that I actually like it and Pennywise and Stephen King's works enough to say, yeah, I would like to play that, because actually I don't love Stephen King's It, and I don't love Pennywise. It is what it is. But I can't say that it doesn't fit. I happen to love Child's Play. I like the Chucky movies very much, and I think if they went that direction, that would fit, and it would be something that I liked. So I absolutely can't disparage anybody for liking the It crossover when I like Child's Play. There are a lot of other horror movie and series icons that would go really well with that small box form factor as crossovers for Betrayal as well. And I think the Scooby-Doo crossover with Betrayal made perfect sense. It was really smart, I think, and very clever. And I say that as somebody who watched Scooby-Doo when I was a kid, but I can't stand Scooby-Doo. I literally can't stand anything about Scooby-Doo. As a juvenile, adolescent, teen, adult, I've almost never been able to stomach Scooby-Doo, except for when I was like 7 years old. Loved it. But I would play Betrayal at the house of Scooby-Doo, or the Scooby-Doo edition, Mystery Machine, whatever they called it. Mysteries Inc. was fine. That was probably about as close as it gets for me. But the question's not about Betrayal. It's about HeroQuest. HeroQuest is a beloved dungeon crawler. And when it went away back in 94, there were a lot of people, understandably, who were not pleased. It tended to last a little bit longer in the US. That's where the later expansions came out. So I have to imagine that the pain of losing HeroQuest was felt much more keenly earlier on in the UK and European regions where it was released, due to them not having any new expansions after Wizards of Morcar. And no, I'm not counting the appearances here and there in White Dwarf magazine. That's not selling games. That's giving people who already have the game quests to try out, little toys to play with. It's not saying, here's a brand new thing that you can go out and buy. I think a lot of the negative response to, I'm going to say, Hasbro's question about whether or not we'd like to see crossovers was because we hadn't gotten the full re-releases yet. We were still wanting stuff that was released way back, and we did not want administrative time and effort put into things that were not related to what we grew up playing and our nostalgia and all of that. And I think that that's perfectly reasonable, given that HeroQuest in and of itself as a re-release plays exactly to that audience specifically. Yes, you could say there's new people who have gotten into the game because it's come back. But the reason it's come back, I think, is because it was loved back then, and the core audience that was able to get it funded and bring it back, well, that's going to be us. I'm not gatekeeping. I'm saying that we crawled so the new players can run. Is that how the phrase, we ran so the new players can crawl, so the new players can fly? Whatever. And as a board game and fantasy lover, I'm very happy that that happened. Now, however, a couple of years later, we've got Wizards of Morcar. We've got these original expansions. We have a lot more faith in Avalon Hill as a company, despite the losses that they have suffered. We have met them. We have seen them very present, very boots on the ground, very approachable out in places like conventions. They've teased stuff. They've released stuff. They've said, hey, bear with us. We're going to have this in stock. They had it in stock. They said, no, we're not going to do this weird limited release thing again. They didn't do the weird limited release thing again. I think at this point in time, Avalon Hill has been demonstrably showing good faith efforts at every turn. There are still some very bizarrely entitled people out there who I don't think understand corporations at their core, and don't understand that even though they are the customer and therefore they think the customer is always right, which is really only 50% of that quote, that everything that they are demanding should be something that they get. That's just outright strange entitlement. I won't get into all of that, but if the boots fit, please take them off and stop being that way. This company has put in a lot of work, and we have been able to reap the benefits as the customers, and we've enjoyed the vast majority of everything that they've put out. I think they've earned a little bit of applause, and if everything were to end tomorrow, I don't think that there are a lot of people who wouldn't say, well, that was a fantastic run. That was an amazing thing that happened, and I'm glad that it happened. I think the amount of people who would not say that would be zero, or maybe other than zero, but I'm going to tell that minority to shut up. If you see glitter on my face at any point, no, you don't. Also, do not buy the Mardi Gras masks at Dollar Tree, apropos of nothing. Let's take a sip of coffee as we contemplate what the answer to that question about crossovers should be now. All right, so in the time that has passed, Wizards of the Coast has only gone downhill. I guess instead of addressing Wizards of the Coast as a whole, which I could, and say the WHOLE, a whole, I'm really more addressing their Magic the Gathering, because I think a lot of people look at HeroQuest, they look at Wizards of the Coast, and they say, I don't want Magic the Gathering crossovers. And I think that's valid. I think that happens to be a reasonable reaction, even though it's one that is conjured. It's like nobody was talking about Magic. Oh, but they would probably go that route. I could agree with that. I can see that possibility, and I still agree with it. I don't think that there should be any crossovers with, say, Dungeons and Dragons-esque properties, but Hasbro is so much more than just that. Hasbro is Mattel. Hasbro is My Little Pony. Hasbro is Barbie. Hasbro is Transformers. Hasbro is G.I. Joe. Hasbro, I think, is Ghostbusters. There's so many pies Hasbro has their fingers in because they own the pies. So here is what I would propose. I think that there are people who actually would like to see crossovers between the actual IPs, HeroQuest and its open-endedness and whatever other IP. But I'm going to say, what if we look at this through a different lens, a different perspective? What if that wasn't really the question? What if having Zargon meet Skeletor was never really in the cards because that wasn't the intent? Or what if it was, but what if we could sway all of those thoughts into option B? And option B is, and I know that there were people who conceived this idea at the time the original question was asked and were commenting on it, that we have releases that come out that have this administrative time and effort put into them that can't be put in now with purely HeroQuest ideas and purely HeroQuest products, because there's only so much time and money to go around. And we don't have a crossover with the HeroQuest IP in any way, shape, or form. But we do apply the IP of the crossover, whether that is G.I. Joe, or if Hasbro can wing it, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Power Rangers, or what have you, and we apply the mechanics of the HeroQuest game system to that universe. What if effectively we look at what Betrayal at House on the Hill has done, and we look at what Talisman has done, and we say, yes, the game is HeroQuest. It's immediately recognizable. When you put it out on the board, you almost instinctively know how to play, even though this is now a completely different skin. And I think that's what would be necessary to sway a lot of people into thinking this is a good idea. It's a completely different skin, because instead of mentioning anything to do with HeroQuest, and I mean any part of the IP at all, I am talking about abominations. I'm talking about Zargon. I'm talking about dread magic. I'm talking about the concept of a barbarian, dwarf, elf, and wizard going on a quest guided by mentor through lore tome. What if all of that is stripped away and completely removed, and we are left with just the logo to remind us that it's the game system, and we are given a HeroQuest-sized box, and within that box, we have a board game about the IP that plays like HeroQuest. Now I think we're on to something. See, this has been done before, not just with Talisman, not just with Betrayal at House on the Hill. IDW had a board games subsidiary that I think is closed now that used a game system. The only games that I'm aware of right at this moment at the top of my head are Batman, Shadow of the Bat, and all of its expansions and all-in stretch goals and all the crap that accompanies that, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past game. If you play either of these behemoth games, you will immediately know how to play the other one because they use the exact same game system. The skins are completely different. We don't have the turtles in Gotham City. We don't have Batman eating pizza with Master Splinter. That's a really funny idea, though. I want to see fan art of Batman eating pizza with Master Splinter. The two games are completely independent from one another. They have completely different teams of artists and people licensing stuff and all that. Shadow of the Bat is firmly rooted in the 90s Bruce Timm style Paul Dini series, Batman the Animated Series. In fact, that is what the board game is kind of based on. The quests are like episodes from the cartoon series. And the Shadows of the Past game On the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles side, it's got nothing to do with any of the TMNT cartoons. It's very much focused on like the comics and a specific line of the comics, but it kind of works. These are both games that have a lot of different hero characters. They have a lot of different enemy characters. They have a lot of different boss characters. They have a lot of different locales. They have a lot of different scenarios, and they have a lot of different modes of operation for each of the characters involved. And all of these things combine to form a rich system. I'm not saying that that game system is for everybody. It's pretty complex. There are a lot of moving pieces, and the rule books written for those games kind of makes everything convoluted and a little bit hard to follow. This is not due to my own personal experience. I'm kind of summing up what I have read from other people because I spent a lot of time hemming and hawing trying to figure out if I wanted to invest money into buying these game collections, these systems. In the end, I decided to, yes, buy Batman Shadow of the Bat and the Arkham Asylum expansion, and no to the TMNT one, purely because I really don't like the TMNT sculpts. The Batman sculpts are okay. They could have been so much better. They're not great, but the TMNT ones are just ugly in my opinion. And I don't know that I'm going to like the game system enough to really have that be my TMNT board game, if that makes any sense. But if I really love the gameplay of Shadow of the Bat, maybe I will eventually go back and get Shadows of the Past and the other TMNT games as well. So I want you to imagine a world in which there's a new HeroQuest game, but it's just not HeroQuest. At the same time, it is exactly HeroQuest, but it's a crossover, not because there's like Ghostbusters coming into the realm, the kingdom, facing off against abominations and the dread forces of the Wizards of Morcar and Cassandria and Skullmar. No. Rather, when you open up the board, you have a tiled single board that has a multitude of rooms on it. It doesn't look like it's a dungeon. It kind of looks like it's an abandoned building. And there are doors that you can place in between rooms on the wall lines to create connections between these rooms. There are 4 hero characters that come with the game. We've got Egon, we've got Spencer, we've got... Why'd I say Spencer? Who the heck is Spencer? Whatever. We've got Egon, we've got Ray, we've got Peter, we've got Winston, and we can have a character named Spencer. And now for sculpts. What if it's conventional? What if they say, okay, HeroQuest has, 6 goblins, 8 orcs, 3 abominations. Go ahead and have the exact numerations of those configurations of monsters as mobs for this game. Think about it. There would be 0 balancing now that has to be done, or, very little balancing because you probably want your hero characters to have slightly different abilities. They would probably give all 4 of the heroes a set of 3 cards, or this would be their opportunity to switch things up a little bit. Maybe they would give each one 5 cards. Wow, nobody ever thought about doing that before. My point is the framework is extremely solid. Yeah, there's a couple of vagaries here and there in the rules. Yeah, I know there's a handful of people saying that we need a hard-bound lore tome quest collection rules fac errata that has everything all in one. But that's just opening up the door to what if there's a typo in that book? What if there's a mistake in that book or a vagary that's not caught when that book is released? Then you're demanding another edition of it. The framework, my point, is very solid. It's there. You can apply other systems to it today. You can go get your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle miniatures from whatever game or 3D prints or what have you, and you can put them on the HeroQuest board, and you can make your own tokens, and you can make your own board, and you can make your own cards, and you can basically say the turtles have these abilities that kind of form the identity, the unique identity to each turtle, Donnie can hack machines. Maybe having machines instead of treasure chests is how you distribute treasure in your quests, your missions. That's one example. Ghostbusters is another example. Transformers has a lot of ranged attacks. It's more like there's lots of cannons and stuff. And also the Transformers can transform into cars. So you'd have additional rules for mechanics as far as that goes. Perhaps you could have your Transformers transform into their vehicle modes and travel with unthreatened movement rather than having to roll. And the unthreatened movement could be 12 spaces, but they wouldn't be able to attack on their turn. They would have to spend an action transforming. Now we could speculate and homebrew through ideas for this stuff all day and all night. But my main point is that I think it would be a worthwhile question for Avalon Hill and or Hasbro to frame to the public at this point. Now, would you like to see crossovers? Because I think if we give it this line of thinking and we tell them, yes, but it's a very strong chance that we could see crossovers hit the shelves that we as old school fans would actually really appreciate. And I'm not speaking for all old school fans. I know there's a number of them out there who said, oh yeah, I would love to see crossovers. And, they're talking about the kind where the IPs actually collide, or it's what I was talking about already, but they said yes favorably, 2 years ago when the Instagram question was asked. And that's totally fine. I respect that viewpoint. I may not have agreed with it back then, and I would still not agree with IP clashes today. But I do think using the HeroQuest game system and having it be applied to a number of very carefully curated and selected properties, it need not be any of the ones that I mentioned here today, but it could be something that, please not anything but Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, think about this. How many people, old school, new school, people in favor, people not in favor, how many people would actually line up immediately to buy a HeroQuest and Warhammer crossover IP? I'm not talking about the old school HeroQuest making a return or anything like that. I'm talking about the game is called The Old World, and then it's uses the HeroQuest game system. And it's not a repeat or a reprint in any way, shape, or form of the old game system, but rather it's using, it could be Age of Sigmar for all I care. Point being, it's Warhammer, contemporary sculpts, stuff that they want to put out there today to sell their books and their war bands and all that. That would go over super well. I don't think there's a lot of people who would say that's a bad idea. Unless, you absolutely hate Warhammer, you hate Age of Sigmar, or you hate Games Workshop, whatever. I still think having the game and having it be played using the HeroQuest game system would be really cool. And then the people who are behind the creative design, they could put together the quests using the HeroQuest sort of difficulty scaling. They can have a quest book that comes with the game that's 14 quests. Maybe they could be a little self-indulgent and do 20 quests. Who knows? And that's the kind of crossover that I would really like to see. Not a crossover where the IPs necessarily come together and you've got people isekaiing into the realm of HeroQuest to fight skeletons and zombies, whether they be a mutant Ninja Turtle or a Batman or a Barbie. But the concept of the board being used in many, many multiple ways, all kinds of different room configurations, traps, monsters, enemies. They don't have to be monsters necessarily. Yeah, I would absolutely think that it's a great idea. It would be applicable to pretty much any property Hasbro could get their hands on. So any property in existence, really. I'm not saying I would like it if they did a crossover with Seinfeld, but I am saying that they could do that and it would actually make sense and it might be a really good game. You've got Seinfeld, Kramer, Elaine, George. You've got all kinds of sculpts for the villains in the show, like the Soup Nazi or Newman. That's a really terrible idea. I probably shouldn't talk about stuff like that or it might get taken seriously. Maybe really as a really slippery slope. Next thing I know, they'll be doing like a Friends crossover. I might quit at that point. That would be the end of the channel. I might have to step down and say, this is no longer for me. This hobby, this is just not what it used to be. Forget gatekeeping. The gates have been burned down. Anyway, I would kind of love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'd like to hear what you have to say about all this. Are we still in a time period where we would absolutely want them to focus on every last little thing that could have been available? I think that the idea of crossovers at this point would not negate that. I think that it would be more of a stair step, more of a back and forth. Okay, this year we're going to release this official HeroQuest thing, and then we're also this year going to release this crossover thing. I think that that could work. I think that as a scheduling and manufacturing and logistics and using all of those standpoints, I think it could work because I don't think it would be all Avalon Hill doing all the work anyway. I think that they would have people from the IP be assigned or commissioned or whatever, somebody who really, really wants to write quests per se for that IP coming on board to give that work. And then it just becomes more of a monetary effort to pay them. because they're taking on the administrative work, but they're not taking it away from Avalon Hill. I have no idea what goes on behind those closed doors, but I think that it would be something akin to that. So anyways, that's the topic for today, and I just wanted to talk about that old question and kind of what the answer could be now if it was framed that way. And, as long as we're not looking at a situation where Magic the Gathering is now selling HeroQuest cards, because I think that would be garbage. That's just my personal opinion. It's not indicative of anybody else. I'm sample size 1 here. I think that would be terrible and horrible. And also, I don't want Wizards of the Coast producing miniatures for HeroQuest and little blister packs, because I think they'd also do a terrible job of that. Sorry, a lot of negativity there at the very end. But I'm just saying, that's the opposite end of the spectrum. I think that's how the question was taken a couple of years ago. Maybe that's how the question was meant to be taken, as long as we make it clear that that's not an option, that that's not what we want, and that we would like other things applied to the game system. I think it would work out really, really well for all parties involved. But yeah, no, let me know what you think about that crazy idea and about this broader topic. And if you comment in a stream of consciousness way, where you're going along with the video and you've got like 18 comments down there because you're responding to different points, I love that. Don't apologize for that. I mean, any engagement's great, even the kind of pointless comments where people are like, this isn't HeroQuest, I'm out. It's not a purely HeroQuest channel, but the engagement is still useful, so keep doing that, I guess. But no, those comments are great because it means that you're hanging on and you're actually watching the whole thing. And I love that kind of engagement. It's so great. But that's not required. If you just want to drop a comment down below and be like, yeah, that was pretty cool, that's also fine. A joke about goats, a complaint that I don't sleeve my cards, they're all great. You can do all that stuff. And I'm perfectly okay with that. But anyways, brave heroes, that's all the time I have. Thank you very much for your kind attention once more. And I will toast you out. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. Farewell for now.